Okay, for today's lab video, we're going to be making a oblique plane 3D model, so showing a square-based pyramid being cut by an oblique plane. So I'm going to start off, like I always do, making my planes a reference. If you have these drawn, and you want to use ones you've already created, that's fine. Just skip this part of the video and use them if you want. I'm not going to talk through creating them again because I've explained them now in multiple videos. All right. Okay, so now I have my vertical plane here and my horizontal plane, and I want to place a square-based pyramid into that. So I'll go through the dimensions for that to use, and you can just follow along. So on the horizontal plane, we're going to sketch the base of that pyramid. So open up a sketch, and we're just going to do a square. So if you drag out a corner rectangle somewhere here in the center, the placement of it isn't crucial, so everybody's will be slightly different at the end, but just try to get it similar to what you see on the screen. So we have this rectangle now, and if I just press escape to get out of the draw tool and I select two adjacent sides of that rectangle and make them equal, that will turn that into a square because we have parallel sets of lines. So now we have this square base. I want to dimension one side of that 70, and I might just move that slightly now that I have it dimensioned. So I'm going to move it into that position there roughly. So again, don't worry too much about getting it perfect. It's just to keep them fairly similar. So you can close that sketch now. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a loft. So we're going to create a point on a plane, a distance above that. Now the distance doesn't really matter. Again, you can, excuse me, you can change the distance to suit yourself, or you can do the same one I do. It really doesn't matter. But we're going to create a new plane for us to sketch on. So if we select our top plane there, hold Control and drag the corner up. That has created a new plane now, and we can change the distance over here. So I'm going to change that on my one to 80, and I might even just bump that up to 85. Okay, so if you want to do it 100, you want to do it 50, it doesn't really matter. Um, just we need to make sure that the oblique plane is going to cut the object. So we can tick that, and I want to start a new sketch on that plane. So I'm going to do a construction line or a center line from two diagonals or two opposite corners like that, creating a diagonal of the square on the base. So you can see it's black, which means it's fully defined because that has added a relation to say it's directly above that corner and directly above that corner. Now, making sure that's a construction line before you move on, I'm going to get a point and I want to place the point on the center of that line, or that center point there. And that is black as well because it's fully defined. So close the sketch, and now we have our apex and our base. So what I can do is go up to Features, Lofted Boss Base, select the base and select the apex. And that gives me a preview there of the square-based pyramid. So I can tick that. I want to hide this plane now just to keep things a bit tidier. And I want to draw my traces now then to find my oblique plane. So first of all, I'm going to draw my horizontal trace. So I'm going to start a new sketch on the horizontal plane. I'm just going to draw a line from the XY line, or that intersection of the two planes, down to this bottom edge, and then I'll press escape. I'm going into Smart Dimension now, and I'm going to make this angle between the XY line and the trace 60 degrees. Once you have that angle in, then what I want to do is create a dimension from the point of the horizontal trace that hits the XY line, from that point to this top corner of the square base pyramid, so of that base, and make sure to take the dimensions straight up like that, so not out to the side, has to be straight up. And I want to make that a distance of 75. So that line now is black, meaning it's fully defined again. So I can close that sketch, and now I want to open a new sketch on the vertical plane. So click the vertical plane, click sketch. I'm actually going to rotate it now a bit so I can see a bit better. I'm going to create a line, and I want the first point of the line to touch the horizontal trace. So that end point of the horizontal trace, I want to latch onto that and bring it up then and touch the top edge as well. So the line is still blue, meaning it's not fully defined at this point. So what we're going to do is go to Smart Dimension and get the angle between that trace and the XY line and make that 45. So now we have 45 degrees there. The line is black, meaning it's fully defined. So close that sketch again. And what I want to do now is create a new plane so I can draw my planar surface on that. So I'll go to Features, Reference Geometry, and Plane, and I can select the 3 points on the traces. So that point, the point in the corner, and this point here. And that has a fully defined plane there now. So if I just tick that for now, I have a plane there. Now, what you could see in that preview is that's actually barely cutting through. So I want it to cut through a bit more. What I can do is I can change this so I can bring this in a bit closer, or I can change the height of the pyramid. It doesn't really matter what you want to do. So say I'll just go through an example. If I want to move the two traces in closer, what I can do is edit that original sketch where I dimensioned the distance from the point on the XY line to this point at the base. So I can edit that sketch and change that, for example, to 65. That should update the other trace as well. So if I close the sketch, the other trace is attached to it as well, and it should move along with it. And now it's hard to see, but you can see it's cutting through more of the object. Now what I might do is I'm going to adjust the height of it as well. So I'll show you that example, and we'll get even more to be cut by the oblique plane. So now I want to edit the height of that apex. So to do that, I have to edit the plane which we drew that apex on. So that is plane 1, as you can see. So we need to change the height of plane 1. So if we edit feature, right click and edit feature, I can add on 10 mil to that, for example. So I might just say 95. That moved up, and if I tick that, it should update the sketch and all along with it. Okay, so it's very important to be using the proper relations as you go along. That means if you change one dimension, it updates the rest of the drawing and doesn't cause a load of errors. So now I'm happy enough with that. I have this plane. The plane itself, I don't need that anymore, so I can hide that. Or I'll leave it for this next step, and then I'll hide it for after that. So I want to start a sketch on that plane. I'm going to create my oblique plane now as a planar surface. So start a sketch following my traces that I already created. And then I want to get the spline tool. So like I said before, just put a few kind of curves there, and it lets the kind of students understand and be able to visualize that that isn't the definite surface as such. So that's continuous. It'll keep going on into space, and that's just showing us a small representation of it. You can actually see it clear now where it's going to cut through that object as well. I'm going to tick that, close that sketch. Now what I can do is hide that plane too, and I want to go to surfaces, planar surface, and select my new planar surface there and tick that. At this point, I'll just try and move that a bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put an appearance on that. So I'm going to say something different this week. So instead of putting a plastic on it and making it transparent, what you can also do is you could put a glass on it. So you can go into glass and say gloss, for example, and I might put a green glass on that planar surface. Right, so you see it's already transparent because it is glass, and that's just another way you can do that. So you don't have to change the transparency as such. And what I can do as well at this point is I can change the sketch color of these traces, and that'll have them finished at this point. So let's sketch these two sketches here, edit the sketch color, do whatever color you want, just make it stand out from whatever background you have. So I don't have any colors on my planes yet. I will do that in a moment. But just we'll finish off the question first, or the task first. Okay, so now what we have is we have a horizontal plane, a vertical plane, and an oblique plane. That oblique plane is cutting through our square-based pyramid, as you can see. So what I want to actually do is split that object in two using the oblique plane, and then we can see what the cut surface will look like. So that's how it would appear in a finished question. Now, instead of cutting that off, I'm going to show you a new feature. I'm sure I would say most of you haven't used it before. So if you go up here to the little arrow beside the SolidWorks logo, go to Insert, scroll down to Features, and select Split. So we have this new box on the left. Okay, so our trim tools is the first thing we need to find, and the trim tools is what you want to cut the object with. So I want to use the surface plane as the trim tool. Now, I don't want it to do it. It'll automatically do this all bodies. I don't want to cut in all bodies. That means it'll cut the planes and everything. Click selected bodies, and then in that box, select the square base pyramid. So it's only going to cut that now. So if I select cut bodies, it cuts it into two, and that's fine. I can just tick that. Sorry, I just need to select them down here as well. And that's just confirming that you actually want them cut. When that is cut, that's fine. I can just select tick, and now that square base pyramid is in two pieces. What I can do at this point is I can just hide that. Okay, and now we can see the cut surface. Now, the beauty of splitting that and hiding it rather than just cutting it away is that if we want to show students, we can go back and show them that bit. So we can just right click on it and select show. Okay, so you could finish it there, but what I want to do is add on a bit more. I'm going to create a 3D sketch showing kind of the outline of how the object would have looked before it was cut. And that's just another way to help the students visualize these drawings. So I want to utilize the apex we already have up here somewhere. So I find that sketch on the left hand side. I know it's inside that loft because I used it to create the loft. So if I click the arrow to the left, find the apex sketch, right click on it and say show, I now have this apex floating in space. From that, what I'm going to do is we're going to start a new 3D sketch. So click that drop down arrow below sketch, select 3D sketch, and I'm going to start with the construction lines or center lines. Now we already have all our points defined, so you select the cut corners, so that corner up to the apex, and I can take that back down to this cut corner then. I'm going to do that again on the opposite side now, so I can go from that cut corner up to the apex and down to this other cut corner. So what I can do now is close that sketch. I want to hide this apex sketch again, so you can either right click on the line there and hide it, or you can go over to the left hand side, right click and hide it again, and then change this sketch color of the 3D sketch and make that something bright as well. So now what we can see is the cut surface, but on top of that we can see what the object looked like before it was cut. Just before I go any further, what I'm going to do is stick on a few colors just to make things stand out a bit. That's fine. Okay, so at this point, what I might do is I would like to have a different kind of a color or a texture on that surface there. Okay, so what that allows me then to do is just show that as a cut surface. So When you're creating a board drawing, usually a cut surface in our section view would appear with diagonal lines. So I'm going to do the same thing on this. So over on the right hand side, I want to scroll the whole way down to decals. Okay, so if you click into decals, we're going to take an image onto that face. So we've only a couple of images here, but there's more within SolidWorks. So what we do is we pick this red and white one, drag it onto the face and drop it on. And now we want to change that file. So we want a different image. So we go over here to browse and it opens up the decals that are built into SolidWorks. So you scroll down through that, there is one of diagonal stripes. So I'm just going to open that. And now it has these diagonal stripes. Now, as you can see, it doesn't reach the top of the surface there. So what I have to do is drag the corners to resize it, make it fill the whole shape, and then you can grab this circle and rotate it whatever way you want. It doesn't really matter, but whatever way you think looks best. So once you get that in the right position, just give it the green tick. So now, as you can see, it's a lot easier to see what our shape was like starting in plan and elevation. What we can see when we look along that oblique plane, how we can get that cut, and then what we see when we look normal to the cut surface. And we can see that cut surface very easily with the diagonal lines. Now, what I want you to do is make sure to label your vertical plane, your horizontal plane, label the traces, horizontal trace and vertical trace, label the oblique plane, and you can label some of the points there if you want as well. That's not crucial, but label that apex anyway. And you could also label the cut surface. Okay, so once that is done, that is the model finished for this week's lab. Make sure to put that onto an A3 drawn sheet like you were shown in the previous lab. And if you forget how to do that, look back at the video from last week's labs. If you have time now at the end of this lab and you have anything else like the first week's CAD files to put onto drawn sheets, use the time now to get that done before the submission at the end of the week. Okay,